Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. In today's episode, I'm joined by a true legend, the voice and songwriter behind the Moody Blues, Justin Hayward. From Nights in White Satin to Tuesday Afternoon and Question, his music has defined the sound of an era. Here's my interview. Justin, welcome.
Thank you.
I have been a massive fan of yours, not only of your singing, of your songwriting, but your guitar playing as well. Can you tell me about how you got into playing guitar and how you got into the Moody Blues?
Well, I come from a family with a very strong faith, and also the school that my late brother and I went to as between the ages of 4 and 11. Actually, in senior school as well, we had hymns every morning in morning assembly. And I remember, I clearly remember being about 4 years old and singing these hymns and thinking, I really like these, such beautiful melodies from the hymns, Ancient and Modern, it was a book. And then when I was about 8, I pestered my parents. I'd seen pictures of a guitar in the paper. They bought me a ukulele, which I could clearly play straight away, because I kind of knew what it was. And there was an British English artist from up north that played the ukulele. I kind of learnt some of his songs. And then I pestered them for a guitar again for another 2 years. And when I was 10, they bought me a guitar. And then when I went to senior school with that guitar, I was pestering other people to be in a group with me. So I was in groups at school. And then I did a couple of theatrical summer seasons when I was 13 and 14. Then when I left school, I was answering ads in the Melody Maker, which was a newspaper. Mm-hmm. And I got a reply from somebody in East London, and I went up to this house, and Marty Wilde opened the door. And I'm 6'2", and Marty's 6'5", and I auditioned for Marty and got the job playing for Marty Wilde guitar. So it was only a couple of months after I left school. That's it. And then I was with Marty.
Did you have lessons anytime, or did you just learn off records?
Oh, if you can play the ukulele, you can kind of play the guitar. It's an easy step. My parents might have sent, because parents do that, don't they? We've got to try and make it proper. And I might have had one lesson, but...
Did your parents ever say...
I heard Buddy Holly, it's 3 chords.
Did your parents ever say, Justin, can you play us a song? And would they have you play it at home or anything like that?
No.
Interesting.
They were too busy.
What about learning guitar leads and things like that? How did you get into doing that? You're an excellent soloist.
Well, I wasn't completely isolated. My brother, when we were young, he made a little transistor radio. He bought a kit from the newspaper, an ad in the newspaper, and he soldered it all together, and then we could listen to Radio Luxembourg. That was the only station that was playing pop music, and so we could listen to that. Yeah, you just learned, hey, I had the Everleys, I had Buddy Holly, I had Cliff Richard and the Shadows.
That's pretty much all you need.
Yeah,
right?
Pretty much to learn, yes, the greatest teachers ever.
When I see videos of you guys playing back in the 60s, you're playing a Telecaster.
Yes.
And it looks like you're playing through a full Marshall stack. What was your rig? I know that you play your 335 and you play Vox amps. Did you play Tele a lot back in the 60s?
Well, in 1963, I had enough money, and my parents went guarantor for me to get a 335, a red 335. And I had it all the time I was with Marty. But I left Marty, and just only a few weeks before I had the call from Mike Pinder to join the Moody's. I had to sell it. I just ran out of money. Oh. And when I was playing acoustic guitar, I was playing a big 12-string guitar that Lonnie Donegan gave me. I was figuring that I was going to be a songwriter. My songwriting acoustic guitar was what I needed, folk clubs, that kind of stuff. When Mike called me, I thought, I better get an electric guitar. So I went down to the shop and I saw this Telecaster and I thought, oh, that's nice. So I bought that because it was the cheapest electric guitar. You probably know that. Yeah, it was 40 quid cheaper than 335.
So did you get your 335 back, or you bought another one?
My original 335, I didn't get it back, no. Well, all through 66, 67, I was playing the Telecaster, and through an AC30 to record.
Okay.
And on stage, went from an AC30 to a 50-watt Marshall. We knew Jim Marshall, and then he gave us these, amps, and 50 watt seemed quite nice, not for recording, for on the road. And then I hired, but in early '68, I hired a 335 from Selmer's, and it was so beautiful that I just didn't want to give it back. And when I spoke to them, I said, I really want to keep this guitar. And they said, well, you can't, because it's our most popular hire guitar. I said, well, I am. And they said, well, you can't, because we're sending a guy around. And this went back and forth. I think it might have gone back to Selmer's for an afternoon. And then I went down there and I said, listen, I'll give you the full price, as if it was new. It was £168. And they were like, all right, yeah, gosh, you're going to pester us forever. So, okay, give us the new price, as if it was new.
Before we go any further, I want to quickly interject that 57% of you watching right now are not subscribed to my channel. So please hit the subscribe button now. Thanks. Everybody would be singing harmonies in your live concerts. How loud was your stage volume? And how well could you hear yourself? Because your pitch is so good. Were you guys loud?
I went from an AC30, of course, when we were still wearing the blue suits and doing covers. Then I had an AC30. I went from that to the 50-watt Marshall, to a 100-watt Marshall, and to 200 watts. This was all before monitors.
Yeah.
A guy called Gene Clare came to see us when we were up in Pennsylvania, Lancaster in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a WEM PA. When we were opened up for Cream, we had a WEM PA. In the places they were playing, it was like, ding, 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 coming out. Gene said, what about if I do the PA? And he said, and I'll take your stuff as well. So he was driving the truck, Gene.
Wow.
And he designed a system. Still no monitors. I think we didn't get monitors till early 70s.
That's really amazing. So you would have to listen to the front of house speakers and just kind of orient towards that.
I just got used to that way of doing it and pitching just with the flute, which was loud, and which cut through, and just what I could hear. Yeah, it was very difficult. But we did become two bands. We were a recording band that had a particular style that Decca captured. Mm-hmm. In a wonderful record company, wonderful recording studios, and a touring band, which, like you say, was very loud.
What was the process? How did you make those records? Would you cut tracks live? And if you had the orchestra, bring that in after? How did you do that?
We didn't have the orchestra, never played with an orchestra until 1990.
Okay.
At Red Rocks. It was the first time we ever played with an orchestra. Days of Future Past, the orchestra was on a separate session.
Okay.
So on our songs, what sounds like an orchestra is the mellotron.
Explain what that is for people that don't know the mellotron.
Okay. The mellotron is a double manual instrument that when you press a key down, it has a tape of 8 seconds. Mike learnt how to roll his hands over the keyboards because after 8 seconds of pressing that key down, the sound was going to stop and the tape returned to the bottom, ready to come back up again. It was a machine built really for like Spike Jones, if anybody remembers Spike Jones, as sound effects. So it was like trains going through tunnels and cockerels in the morning. And it was for sound effects. And Mike took all of the sound effects out, duplicated all the kind of orchestral sound, because it had sounds of strings and brass and flutes, oboes and things, and chorale on it too. Mike duplicated those, made it double manual, so it was already double tracked. I really felt for him every night. I would look across and there'd be some awful thing happened, something got stuck because it was springs,
It's a
tapes.
very delicate instrument.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like a sampler, basically.
The only person I ever saw also using it was a jazz musician called Graham Bond.
Now, would you guys have to tech that stuff with mellotron when you load it into every new space? Is like you don't know what it's going to do each night, right?
I mean, we had to carry that thing in every night. And of course, there were 6 of us, so there were 5 in the group and a roadie. If we were lucky, if a roadie turned up, we had to manhandle it in. And I always wondered who was carrying it. I was supposed to be doing my share, but you know how you put your hands up and you go, oh, and then, oh, to you, oh, kind of like that. And
I've seen you play 12-string on some of these old videos. And what did you play? What kind of 12-string would you play?
So the 12-string on nights and the early days was, it was called a Francis. It was custom-made thing that Donegan gave me. I went to Donegan's house one day, and this is before I joined the Moodies, and he said, have a look in my attic, there's some guitars up there that I don't want. And so he was down below, so I was throwing these guitars down at him. He was like, oh, that's great, no, I don't want that. And then the Francis came down, he said, I don't want that, you can have that. So I took it, and that's what I played for nights and the first couple of records. Then one day, his guitar player came round to where I was staying, and my girlfriend was in, and he said, Lonnie wants to borrow that guitar that Justin's been using. This was after nights.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And he said, I'll bring it back tomorrow. And my girlfriend was like, okay. And I never saw it again.
Oh, my gosh.
For 50 years.
Did you get it back then?
I had to buy it back from his widow.
Wow.
I have it now, yeah.
Wow. What did you get after that?
Then I went up Charing Cross Road and I got a Gibson 12-string in 68. Yamaha had just come out with some really nice acoustic guitars.
Yeah, they had good ones back then.
Yeah, they did, yeah. And Mike and I both bought one, and that's the guitar on Never Comes the Day and those kind of things.
What is the tuning that you use on Question for the 12-string? That's not in standard tuning, is it?
No, it was quite amusing because a friend of mine in Trapeze, he really loved that song, and he'd been playing it in normal tuning. Can you imagine trying to play Question in any guitar player in normal tuning? It's really sort of dexterous gymnastics or whatever you would call it.
I want to play the song and talk about it, but for people that might not know it, this is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's so melodic, but I always wondered about it because it was like 2 different songs. Okay, so I'm gonna...
Why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door? With 1,000 million questions about hate and death and war. 'Cause when we stop and look around us, there is nothing that we need. In a world of persecution that is burning in its greed. Knocking at the door, because the truth is hard to swallow. That's what the war of love is for.
Okay, before we talk about the next section, is this a live take in the studio?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So it's me, John, and Graham. Graham was really helping on that. He could do that, those 16s on the hi-hat.
Yeah.
And he could move it over to the snare drum as well. I just had to get him in time, you know, that's all. And it was just a question of a good take. Yeah, there's no double tracking on it. I think it's the Gibson 12-string, John on bass and Graham on drums, and Mike on tambourine.
Tambourine playing is really great on it.
Mike was the best tambourine player in the world.
He's an amazing tambourine player.
He played on Imagine.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yes, he's on the album. And he played on one song on Sgt. Pepper, Fool on the Hill, I think it was, yeah.
He's a great tambourine player. I mean, that is really a hard instrument to play. People do not realize to really play tambourine well is difficult.
Yeah, he used to play maracas as well. And I do remember one gig with a particularly awkward gang of guys that were down the front in a gig, giving us a hard time, saying they were going to beat us up afterwards because their girlfriends fancied us. And Mike had the maracas. I can't remember what the song was. He had 4 in his hands and would shake the maracas in time. And one of these guys got pretty sort of leery. And as Mike was moving to the microphone, he smashed the maracas over this guy's head. Then we were in a cloud of powder. Because inside a used maraca, there's just wood powder.
I had no idea.
Yes, because you shake it so much that, of course, inside.
Oh yeah, everything would just disintegrate.
Inside the ball of the maraca. Yeah,
that is hilarious.
Yes, I do apologise. If the guy's still around.
Okay,
Actually, I don't. They were intent on.
They
were intent on beating us up afterwards, and I think we escaped within an inch of our lives.
You're tracking something like this. Playing the hi-hat, you're playing along. Are you guys seeing each other in the studio? What were the studio setups like back then?
Okay, so separated. Decca Studio was beautiful, Decca number 1. So Graham was separated just by sort of batten things about 5 or 6 feet high. And then John was in the middle, and then I had my place which was totally mine, with just my guitars and my AC30. And the U87 vocal mic, and that was just my place. And Mike would be sitting there was a stage in Decca number 1. Mike would be sitting on the edge of the stage in between us all.
But everybody could see each other.
Just about, only just over the top of these
gobos.
Batten. Yeah. But we didn't need to see each other because, we were listening on headphones.
Yeah.
It was a short session question. It was on a Saturday. There was nothing else, and I remember it distinctly. So it had been a 3-hour session. So we probably did a few run-throughs.
Would you guys do all your harmony parts, all the background vocals at the same time, or would you overdub those?
Oh, you mean at the time of the first recording?
Yeah.
No, the backing track would go down first, drums, bass, guitar, and then Mike as well. Mike was always holding the rhythm, and we could always see Mike. But hopefully they were following me as well, because it was my song. Then we would leave Mike to do his mellotron part on top. That was a bit I never knew what was going to happen.
Okay.
I knew when I wrote a song what the bass and the drums were going to do, just because I liked to tell people what to do.
Right.
But then the best thing was to leave Mike in the studio to do his
Would he just
part.
experiment around then and come up with his part?
Yeah, he'd usually, when he was, say, doing the tambourine or maraca, whatever he was doing, on the original track, I imagine he would be thinking about that, yeah. These are the days, of course, when you wouldn't go into the control room regularly. You had to be invited into the control room.
So what would you, what about playback? Would you just listen through your headphones?
Yes.
Would you want to go into the control room and they just wouldn't, they literally have to invite you in?
No, it was just an unwritten sort of rule, really. You had to be invited, yes, to come in. You couldn't go in there and fiddle around. That came later,
Who would decide, if it's your song, would you decide if the take was a keeper? How would you decide these things?
Well, I think we would all say, Derek Varnels was the engineer, very proper, very educated, and Tony Clark, of course. And yes, I think we would say that's enough, kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
I think we've got it. Maybe there's one other take that you listen to, and I would always have it in my mind. Well, I thought take 3 was good, so I'd like to listen back to that as well in the headphones.
So once you decided on the take, then you would do your overdubs. When you would do vocal parts together, would you stand at one microphone or were you singing into multiple mics?
No, if in those big choral vocal parts, then it would be the 4 of us, because Mike had a lovely voice as well. Mm-hmm. So Mike or maybe Ray on the bottom, then Mike, then me, and then John. Yeah.
And how would you
all around one mic?
So how would you decide what parts, who would sing what parts? Just by the range?
Yes, that's right. And if it was my song, then I'd tell people what to sing.
So you would literally work
and
out
so
your
if it was
parts.
somebody else, they would probably tell me what to sing.
Okay.
And then I would do what I wanted. Yeah.
Okay, I want to continue with this.
It's not the way that you say it when you do those things to me. It's more the way that you mean it when you tell me what will be. And when you stop and think about it, you won't believe it's true that all the love you've been giving has all been meant for you. I'm looking for someone to change my life. I'm looking for a miracle in my life. And if you could see what it's done to me, to lose the love I knew could safely leave me.
So those two sections are actually very different in the mood of them. And you came up with that one night before.
Yeah, it's Friday night. I think I had that open tuning. I had two songs, but two songs that weren't complete. And I thought, well, I wonder if they would kind of go together. And then lyrically, if I could make some kind of link about the urgency of life. And I think I was thinking of what young people in America were going through. And, you know, it's a very different life for young people in the UK. Conscription had finished.
Yeah.
The draft was still going on here. And people that I knew and loved and were having to make awful sort of choices of conscience as well. But anyway, so that first bit was about that. And then I was madly in love. I'd lost somebody. And it just seemed to be a connection between the two some kind of rather beautiful tragedy.
It's hard to wrap my head around the fact that you can write these songs and then just go in and record them, and it's just like a one-day process.
Oh, it's a couple of hours question.
I mean, really...
Graham and John, they got it. And Mike too. You know, to play it again. You know, and then you just concentrate on what you did. They weren't critiquing the song.
It's just such a foreign way compared to the way that you guys probably made records in the '80s. Then this is radically different. You know, you start where you can't even go in the control room. And by the late '80s, records are made over time, and you know, you do overdubs and things like that.
I think Graham, our drummer, was very happy when the Lindrum explosion happened.
Because why?
He was happy to go along with it and not have people like me saying, "You're slipping out of time, man," and then he'd have to go, "Yeah, but you got to feel it." And so we'd always have that discussion about time, and time is in a recording, as you know, is all important. And then when Lindrum came along, it kind of and Timecode came along. It was, Graham felt it as a big help, really, whereas a lot of drummers resisted, didn't they?
Yeah. When you have tempo changes like this is all freestyle, basically.
Yeah.
And they're just following your acoustic playing.
Yeah, we just learnt the song in the first few takes. We learnt the song round a table that we had in the studio.
And you just sit there with your acoustic, okay, here's the intro, and you play it.
Yeah.
And then it's going to go to this breakdown section, and then it's going to go into the different time feel.
Yeah, that's right. It's not complicated.
Right, and then it's like, okay, I got it. And then everybody kind of gets in their places. You get your headphone mix, and then boom.
Yes.
The song gets made. And then it's this instant classic.
Well,
that takes a little bit longer.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. I've always wondered about that particular song. I'm sure I know that you get asked about Nights in White Satin, and this is not going to be an exception. I am going to ask you about that. For the people that don't know it, I'm going to just play the beginning. I know people that watch this are going to know this song, but...
Nights in white satin, never reaching the end. Letters I've written, never meaning to send. Beauty I'd always missed with these eyes before. Just what the truth is, I can't say anymore, 'cause I love you. Yes, I love
you. When you're playing your acoustic part there,
Yeah.
it sounds huge with the bass in there. Are you playing F sharp on the low string there with your thumb?
Oh, yes.
You're
I'm
playing-
a thumb.
You're a thumb
F
guy. Sharp on the D
yeah,
chord
you
player.
asked Mike. Yeah, I'm a thumb guy.
When I hear that, it's like, oh, there's a tenth happening between the bass and your guitar part. And that's why it sounds so big when it gets to the D chord.
I often play a D chord with 2 F sharps.
Okay?
Actually, 3 from the bottom: F sharp A, F sharp A, D, F sharp.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because guys that played with their thumbs, John Lennon played a lot of chords with his thumb. It would give it a specific sound, bigger sound than normal. And I could always tell people that played bass notes with their thumb if they'd add the 3rd or the 5th or something like that. Or playing a C chord, and you play your C chords a lot with you add the G on the bottom.
Yes.
And that it makes it fuller sounding.
I'm a self-taught guitar player.
Yeah.
So I never learnt to get round the guitar and like do those chords where you're coming up from the bottom. Self-taught people, you know, we're stuck with ourselves.
It's good.
Because it's very difficult to move out of that sometimes.
Nights in White Satin, the recording process of that, same kind of thing. Yes or no?
Well, we recorded it for the BBC first, a few months before, and then we were driving up the A1 in our van, and we were listening to it on the radio. It was on a program called Easy Beat the next day that the BBC put out, and we pulled the van over to the side of the road, and we listened to Nights, and you know, probably there were substances involved as well in how we perceived it. We all said that's kind of spooky, that thing. You know, you don't realise until it's played back. And we hadn't listened to it in the BBC studio, and then there's something makes me feel a bit funny, that song. And we got to the nearest truck stop or whatever, and Mike got on the phone to the BBC, and he said, "You know that thing that you just put out on Easy Beat that we did yesterday?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "Could we possibly have a copy of that?" And they said, "Oh no, that's what tape is for, man, to reuse." So,
no.
Yes.
They recorded over it?
Yes.
What?
Yes. And then, of course, we went through the mental torture, me personally, of, oh my God, it'll never have that spooky, beautiful feeling. I never have it again, you know. That's why I go through life like that. Then we recorded it a few months later for the BBC, for Decca, of course, very quickly, because we were already playing it on stage. Only about 30 years later, I was in Germany, and a guy came up to me. He said, "You know the one that you did for the BBC?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, they did a transcription for the World Service." He said, "And I've got it. Wow. And I'm going to bring it tomorrow, and I'll give it to you." And he gave me the tape of it. Yeah, it was very nice.
That's
different.
Fantastic.
Would I have chosen between the two? The Decca records. Decca had that sound of the high harmonies. Was all real echo chambers.
I wondered about that.
Yes. There were actually 2 or 3 echo rooms, microphone at one end and a speaker at the other on the top of the building.
These echo chambers that were at these studios really had their own gave the
Totally.
things a vibe that is...
Yeah, fantastic. And they were able to move, of course, if Derek Varnell's, the engineer, didn't think it was quite right, he could actually go into the echo chamber and move the speaker, make it a bit shorter, and
Move it closer to the mic.
Move it closer to the mic or further away, yeah.
When were you able to go into the control room I always wondered about that. British artists that I've interviewed all talk about this, that you couldn't go in the control room unless you were invited. And when were you able to just walk in there?
Well, you have a reason to walk in, but you were only going in there to sort of lean over the back of the mixer and hear the stereo as they heard it. I suppose about 3 albums in, about Threshold, I think we felt we could wander through. It was when, after Sir Edward Lewis, who was the boss of Decca, came down to the studio one day, which was unheard of. People were fainting. Oh my God, and the staff. Then he said, well, I don't know what you boys are doing, but people seem to like it, so you can have whatever studio time you want, just call. We would take little bits of studio time. That's like Question. So you would look at the rota, and see that there was a gap on a Saturday, and then we'd take that.
And would you tell the guys, hey, there's an opening here, let's go in there?
Yes, we planned to do it. Yes.
Can you tell me about mixing of records? How did you mix these things? Or would they just do a quick board mix after you tracked them?
From the early
like?
days?
Yeah.
Well, they were going from, I think when Nights was 4-track to 4-track.
Yeah.
So they would be bouncing as they went. Mm-hmm. You're happy with the rhythm section, and then as Mike was playing, they'd be bouncing to another machine. And so it was pretty much set what the mix and the balance was going to be like. And I think that just came later. Of course, it very quickly got 8-track and then 16 and then 24 by the 72 or something like that. And that made it a lot easier. And we were allowed into the control room there. But I don't ever remember having the nerve to sit down at the desk and push Derek or Tony Clark out of the way in those first 7 albums. Whereas in the 80s with Tony Visconti, he really welcomed me to be part of the balance. The balance is everything.
Yes.
We talk about the mix, but it's the balance.
Once the mixes were done, the balancing was done,
Mm-hmm.
would you then get test pressings after that and then listen to them? And would you have any say in these things about the sound of the record with the pressing or anything like that?
Well, that was really lovely. I enjoyed that bit. I would go to the cutting room at Decca as well. I enjoyed that bit. Nobody else bothered to turn up. But I liked that bit. And you could see it done.
Can you explain that for people? What that was?
So
like?
when the mix was decided on for a recording, and then Derek Varnell, the engineer, would compile the whole thing in terms of an album, 47 minutes worth of music. Then he would send it to the tape, the 2-track tape, to the cutting room. And the cutting room was in only a few yards away from the control room at Decca. And the guy in charge of it was a lovely man called Phil. And so it would send the tape over there. Phil would transfer it to a master pressing, usually steel, I think. Mm-hmm. And then make sure that there was no sort of dust in it or any little glitches or anything like that. And then that would go... You'd know more than I what it was made of, the master pressing. Then that would go to the factory, yes, to be pressed. Decca had their own factories, sleeves were great, sleeves and vinyl.
What was it like when you'd get?
What was it like?
What was
That's
it like
the question.
when you would get
the
first pressing of a record and put it on?
I'd always think it was quieter than everybody else's. It's like when your song comes on the radio, you think it's quieter than that last record.
Always, right?
Yeah,
I
had always one foot in the mono Dansette record player, straight down the middle camp.
You like mono?
I did like mono, yeah. I didn't have a stereo system until about 1970. Couldn't afford one.
That's amazing.
we had nothing, you know. And when we came here, we were everybody's support band, you know, as well. So,
Who were some of the bands you supported here?
the first tour we did was that I really liked. We opened up for Canned Heat on a tour, and man, I used to love watching them. So good. Mm-hmm. The boy I think they called him the Owl. He died, unfortunately, quite young. But he would start that rocking movement, you know, and then he'd start, and they'd all join in, and the groove was fantastic. And they were really kind to us. We were on a bus that's kind of like a school bus that they still use, you know, that kind of stuff. We opened up for Jefferson Airplane, Love, another group called It's a Beautiful Day that were great. And we did some gigs on the Cream tour. And then just about everybody, and of course the big festivals, but we were well down the bill until about 1971, I think. And then I went with another artist, who shall be nameless, to the promoter's office. And I said, what time are we on? And he said, oh, you guys don't go on until, 10 o'clock or something. And then this other person said, what? So what time am I going on then? And he said, well, you go on at 8:30. I was like, so I go on before them? I was like, yeah. I said, what? And the guy and the promoter said, well, it's a Moody Blues crowd.
Wow.
And I remember that distinctly. And then we were the top of the bill. Hey, we didn't mind opening up. We could be back in the hotel by 9.
What kind of band, if you were to categorize the Moody Blues, what kind of a band would you say stylistically?
We just followed I don't think you can. We just trusted our judgment and went our own way. We went our own way and saw what happened. There was no plan or strategy for how things worked out. I don't know what you would call it, because we were never under pressure to make hit singles. Decca and London were really interested in albums, and of course the birth of FM radio, our stuff was perfect for FM radio. Other record companies, particularly British companies, let the side down, I think, with drums on the left and vocals on the right. I was a bit disappointed in them, but Decca had this lovely stereo spread.
I think it's undefinable because you have so many different types of songs.
Yeah.
You're a rock band. You have very heavy moments. You have folk moments.
Tongue-in-cheek. There was some tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, some tongue-in-cheek. There's some progressiveness, psychedelic. Yeah. I mean, to me, Nights in White Satin is very much, when you say spooky, I think it's very psychedelic in the vibe of it, in the reverb and the darkness of the lyric, even though it's not really a dark lyric. It's a.
Oh, there is a darkness in there.
There is a darkness, right?
Yeah. Yes, there's a tragedy in there somehow as well. Yeah.
Is it just in the sound of it though, too, or is that a part of it? Is the sound of it has that tragedy in there, melancholy?
There's a loss in there, which sometimes in songs is the most beautiful thing, you know. Yeah. And I don't try to analyze it too much. Every word of that song means something to me. I've spent my life trying to explain it, not very well.
You still do these songs, Justin, in the same keys, and that is amazing. And these are high songs. You're a tenor. Mm-hmm. Did anyone say, "Oh, you're a tenor"?
No, I don't think anyone tells me how to sing. But I know that, like with Mike and the record that I've got out now, Mike, "Life in a Northern Town," Mike just listened to the part of my voice that he really liked, that he wanted to feature. And so we got that right. I often get it wrong with songs because I'm writing at home quite quietly, and then when you try and do it full voice, so things are different.
Right. I want to ask you about this. I love your guitar tone on there.
Oh, thank you.
What is that?
Oh, right. It's the 335 straight into the normal channel of a Vox AC30 with a top boost.
You have a top boost, okay.
Yeah, you've got to have the top boost, yeah. Well, the top boost version of the AC30. And straight into the normal channel, not the bright channel.
Okay.
Not the lead channel. And full up. And then you just got to be brave enough to stand in front of the thing.
Yeah, AC30s are so loud. And then you crank the thing. Come on. I don't know if people realize how loud being in the room with an AC30 is cranked.
I had really good headphones on. Mm-hmm. So I was listening to it. And then you just have to stand, as you know, every guitar player knows, you have to stand in the right place in the compass of around a guitar amplifier.
Yeah.
To get the particular spot where it sounds right.
But your rhythm playing in here is so very tight and articulate. It sounds like you're muting a little bit.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mute a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
With the ball of my hand.
Yeah. In the solo section... Okay, so you've got your rhythm part, right? The solo's an overdub.
Later solos on overdub, yeah.
Later solos and overdubs. So when you did overdubs for solos, where would you stand? Would you be out in the live room? And you would never go in the control room for something like that, right?
No, I never got a sound. Only much later, when I've been working with Alberto, have I been in Italy, have I been able to be in the control room at the same time as I'm playing solo, electric solo. No, I would be down on the studio floor. But I did have, I've still got it. It looks like a Marshall top head. It's a Marshall fuzz unit that they built.
Okay.
Fuzz and reverb. And that was really nice. And I've still got it to this day. That's
that sound?
It's the end sound, yes.
Yeah, the end solo sound.
Yeah, and I used it it's on other things like New Horizons and those kinds of things.
And would you be near the amp when you're doing those parts?
Yes.
And you would like that, have that interaction between the two. That's a really important part.
Yes, on the point in the compass where it's sung. Yes, and that guitar just, man, I'm in love with that guitar. You know,
the 335.
I beg your pardon, the 335.
Yeah. Did you?
You've got lovely guitars here, but I've got my 335.
Did you ever drop it and snap the headstock?
Did I ever drop it and snap the headstock? No, it fell off me.
Okay.
I went boom on the floor
one
time. And then I did nothing for about a minute. And that was all right.
Wow. Do you ever go back and listen to your records, or if you're driving and one of your songs comes on the radio, will you listen to it?
Yes, of course. But, yes, of course. And I like now. It's lovely that you love all of the things from the past, and that's very nice, and I'm very happy about that. And, I won't say but, and I like now.
Let's talk about now. You have a guitarist that's sitting in here, Mike Dawes, who's a very good friend of mine, who's been on my channel a number of times, and he's an incredibly great guitar player. I love the fact that you guys play together, and you've been playing together for years.
Well, about 12 years, yeah.
12 years. Well,
on the road. It'd be nice to do something in the studio. We haven't got round to that yet.
Mike is a uniquely interesting guitar player. How did you even run across him?
I looked on YouTube for great. I Googled great guitar players, British.
Okay.
And there was Mike.
What do you think about Mike's style of guitar playing? It's so interesting. It's so different. Could you ever have imagined people playing like that in the past?
The wonderful thing about not in the past, no. But the wonderful thing is that Mike covers the drums and the bass in one go with me. So that's what we talk about, and that's what's important. And Mike handles that. And then I actually think it makes us truer to the original recordings. Like I said earlier, we did become two bands, a recording band and a live band. I think what I'm doing now is truer to the recording band and the balance that the recording band had. Yes, but I remember a guitar tech that we had. We were talking about Mike's style one day before a gig, and I asked Mike if I could stand right in front of him and watch him do it, and the guitar tech and myself, and we stood right real close to try and understand what he was doing.
And you still can't?
No, he got to the end of the thing. He's like, nope, I still don't get it. I did. This is another mildly interesting thing. I did a show for a benefit. I think it was in Cannes in the south of France, and they had a guy. There was a guy from Mongolia who could do that throat singing, so he never stopped.
Yeah,
it was just rolling all the time. I was brave enough to say, "Can I get really close to you?" Through an interpreter and see what's happening in your body, how you do this. How you make these sounds, and he could harmonize with himself.
Yeah. Was he singing incredibly quietly?
Not ish.
Okay.
Yes, not much louder than we're speaking now.
Okay.
And he was agreeable, so I put my head on his chest and listened, and it's like, it's incredible, man, how you do that. Circular breathing, and then you get this drone going, and then he'd harmonize with himself.
Yeah, I've always found that fascinating, the Mongolian throat singing.
Yeah.
When you think back on your career here, you're still out touring. You're out. You're going everywhere still. You always think forward.
Yeah. I'm with lovely people. We talked about Mike, but the crew that I've got, I'm with some people in the past we were with, and I didn't have any choice, and personally think they were the right people, but maybe they were right for somebody. But now I'm just with such beautiful people. Josh is a wonderful guitar tech, and Donnie, a tour manager. It's a precious little team. We know we're good. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but we know we know what we're doing has some merit, and everybody in the team knows that too.
It's great. And you have as much fun as you ever did, right?
Fun is not a word that I would use.
You look forward to playing.
No, I go into a deep dive about an hour before I go on stage. Only Andoni will tolerate me. He knows. But I'm all right when I get on at the end of the first song.
You don't mean you get nervous, do you?
Strangely enough, I'm an insomniac, chronic.
Okay.
But an hour before a gig, I could have the best sleep. I think something in my mind is going, run away, leave this situation. And I could have the best sleep ever, natural sleep.
Wow.
But of course, I have to wake up and do it. I love the magic that's created in a room when we play. When we play these songs, you can do them perfectly in a sound check. But when you're in a performance and people come into the room, the audience comes in, they bring something tangible. Like you and I, we sit sometimes late at night, don't we? And we listen to music all on our own. And there's an aura around us. Mm-hmm. There's an aura around us that's you can feel and touch. And now when 800 people bring that into the room, and it's like, there's the guy who did that. He's singing it, he's playing it, and they bring some magic into the room, and that's something I would never want to give up. Feeling. Yeah.
Well, Justin, it's such an honor to sit with you and chat.
Great pleasure.
I can't even believe it. I've been so excited about this. I've been wanting to talk with you, and I'm glad that we were able to make it happen.
Me too.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.